Alright, so for this video we're going to learn how to cut metal using a jeweler's saw. The first thing I'm doing is opening up the jeweler's saw blade pack, just cutting off that little tiny wire and then unraveling it so I can get all the loose blades. So my goal is to first put the blade onto the German jeweler's saw frame. So I have to make sure that my teeth of my blade are going in the right direction, and we want them to be facing down so we can get the optimal cut into our metal. So the teeth should look something like that. You always want them pointing down. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up these two front pieces in order to slip my blade inside of it. So I'm loosening those up. But then on the back, I'm making sure that that's nice and tight so my frame doesn't move. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the top of the blade with the teeth facing out towards me. I'm going to make sure it's slipping between those two little pieces of metal and that it's nice and tight on the top. And I run my finger over it to make sure that the blade's teeth are going the right direction. The next thing I want to do is make sure that I have tension in my blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that it's the right length, and then I'm going to push the top of the saw frame into the table to kind of bend it a little bit. And then I'm going to put the bottom of the blade inside the bottom opening and then tighten that back up. So it should be like a guitar string, nice and tight. Okay. My next thing is that I'm going to draw my design using pencil in a 2x2 inch square for my pendant. So my design, I want to think about the negative and the positive space, what I'm going to cut out versus what I'm going to keep. So I wanted 3 circles, but I know that if I want to cut out the insides of the circles, I'm going to have to do some adjusting to my design. So what I like to do is in pencil first I sketch out my main idea, and then in Sharpie I go back and refine it by darkening everything I know that I want to remove and cut out. So this just might take a little bit of time and a little bit of brain power to make sure that I'm not cutting out pieces I need. So your design, if you are a virtual student, you don't have access to a drill press. So unfortunately, if you want a lot of negative space on the inside, you won't be able to cut this out without the use of a drill press. That doesn't mean you can't have a cool design, it just means you have to think a little bit more critically about your design. But for those of you that are in person, you can have these spaces that are cut out on the inside in order to access it. So that'll be the next video, is how I'm going to get those pieces. But as you can see, I'm coloring in the inside, knowing that that is going to be removed from my final pendant. You don't have to do this, this is optional, but it is indeed helpful to make sure that you don't mess up your final pendant design. I am adjusting as well my design before I'm satisfied with it. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my metal. And I want to grab my metal to make sure that I can rough it up with 220 sandpaper. So that is the highest grit of your sandpaper, or the biggest grit. So I'm roughing it up because I'm going to be attaching glue to the back of my design, and I want to make sure it has something to stick to. Metal is very shiny, and obviously it's not absorbent like paper. So when you glue something down, eventually it will fall off because it's not sticking. So this is just temporary to get it nice and scratchy, and to make sure that the glue sticks and doesn't fall off. So just a few scratches with the 220 sandpaper. Okay, now I'm going to cut out my design using the scissors, and I will need a glue stick. Please don't use Elmer's glue, it's just too messy. The glue stick works just well enough, and you can always glue it back on if it does indeed fall off. So I'm going to attach the glue to my paper and make sure that I get the edges nice and sticky so it doesn't fall off. And then I'm going to stick that right on the side that I sanded. And for me, I press it down and rub it and make sure that it sticks really well. And there you go. Okay, here's the part that you need. So you need a V-block, a C-clamp, and you're going to need your jeweler's saw. And you want to make sure that the V-block is facing you and it's off the edge of the table. I also like to have the C-clamp with the adjustable end up on top of the table so I can always adjust it and don't have to fidget with it underneath. I like it nice and tight so it doesn't wiggle. And then I'm able to put my metal on top of the V-block and cut it. Okay, so this is the tricky part. We're going to have two angles here. You always want to start from the top of the blade, pull up and down because you want those teeth to stick into the metal. And I make it look extremely easy, so I apologize. You always want to keep your blade straight, like this, because if you don't keep it straight, there's a possibility that it will break. So never at an angle. I'm also not pushing forward. I'm not adding any pressure. I'm letting the blade do the work for me. You want to make sure that you're utilizing all parts of the blade from the top to the bottom because that cuts the most of it off. You don't want to waste all your time cutting frantically and then nothing is being removed. In order to turn with your blade, you're going to keep cutting and slowly make your way over the edge. Again, I'm making this look extremely easy. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of maneuvering with both hands, but you will get it. It is very easy to go forward with your blade. It is trickier to go back. So make sure that you're going slow and cutting just parts and pieces off at a time. So that is cutting the outside of your pendant, and we will go to the inside in the next video.